In a village in a faraway Ghanaian kingdom, there was a little girl named Nhyira. She and her mother, Mame, lived alone on their small farm, where they grew cocoa for their kingdom. Although their farm was small, Mame knew how to grow the cocoa plants to make the sweetest chocolate anyone has ever tasted. Nhyira learned many things from Mame. She learned how to grow cocoa and how to make soap from burnt cocoa husks.
Mame loved Nhyira very much, and wanted to give her the life of a princess. Unfortunately, life was very hard for them, and often they struggled with poverty.
One day, the king's men came to their small farm to buy cocoa for their king, who loved chocolate very much. They brought their scales and their pockets jingling with coins, and demanded cocoa. "Put your cocoa on this scale, and we'll pay you when there's enough to balance it with this small gold statue," said the king's men.
Mame and Nhyira started to load cocoa onto their scale. 1 basket of cocoa beans, the scale did not tip. 2 baskets of cocoa beans, the scale did not tip. 3 baskets of cocoa beans, the scale still did not tip.
Mame and Nhyira were very frustrated. There was no way the little statue could weigh more than 3 baskets of cocoa beans. They had only 1 basket of cocoa beans left, and were worried they wouldn't be paid.
Nhyira nervously placed the last basket on the scale. Slowly, the scale finally started to tip and balance out. Mame and Nhyira breathed a sigh of relief, and eagerly awaited the payment from the king's men.
"Very good," said the men. "The king will be most pleased with this. Good day." The men started walking away with the baskets of cocoa and their coins still jingling in their pockets. Mame knelt down and wept.
"Mame, it is going to be all right," said Nhyira, trying to console Mame. "We will get paid later. Do not worry."
"There goes the last of our cocoa. We will not be able to grow more for a long while," said Mama. "Our plants have been attacked by myriads and our soil is turning to dust. We have no hope left."
"That is true, Mame. But crying will not heal our plants or nourish the soil. We must find the hope and the strength to keep going," said Nhyira.
Mame started to feel better, gave Nhyira a big hug, and went back to work tending to her cocoa plants.
Years passed in this way, with Mame and Nhyira struggling, yet happy, until Nhyira grew and became a young woman.
One day, at the market, as Nhyira was buying food, she heard news of a new community that would help cocoa farmers named Kuapa Kokoo. There was to be a meeting soon for all who wished to join it.
At the meeting, the leaders of Kuapa Kokoo spoke about how there no longer will be corrupt cocoa collectors, and how the community of cocoa farmers will join together and become powerful to gain fair prices and treatment. Nhyira became excited and hopeful for her future. She met many other friendly cocoa farmers at the meeting, including a kind young man named Kunu.
After the meeting, Nhyira ran back to her mother to share the news.
"Mame, there are people at the market talking about a new union that will make our lives better," said Nhyira excitedly.
"That's a nice idea, Nhyira, but I don't think anything can help our situation," sighed Mame.
"But I think they will," contended Nhyira.
"Then get your own land and cocoa and make your own way. You're old enough to do so now," encouraged Mame.
So, with only a small amount of money she'd saved up and a single cocoa plant given to her by her mother, Nhyira confidently set out to become an independent cocoa farmer. What she found, however, was that no one was willing to sell land to a girl. She asked many people, but was turned away by all, with each rejection diminishing her enthusiasm bit by bit. She was almost ready to give up and go back home to her mother when she remembered the young man from the meeting. Nhyira ran to his house and knocked on the door.
"Hello?" asked Kunu as he opened the door. "Oh, it's you from the meeting. How wonderful to see you again."
"Hello, Kunu. It is nice to see you too," replied Nhyira. "I was wondering if you had any spare land you could sell to me."
"Sorry, Nhyira. The land I have is barely enough for growing cocoa," said Kunu.
"Oh, well, thank you anyway," said Nhyira sadly as she turned and started to walk back home.
"Wait!" shouted Kunu, running out to Nhyira. "My land might not be big enough for 2 separate cocoa farmers, but it might be big enough for 2 cocoa farmers working together. Would you want to live with me and help me tend to my cocoa farm?" offered Kunu.
Nhyira thought about that for a short while, then happily said yes.
For a few years, Nhyira and Kunu worked side by side. They became great friends and eventually fell in love. After they married, they had 2 children and were very happy. Under Kuapa Kokoo, their farm flourished and they were able to afford many things they wouldn't have been able to before.
One fateful night, there was a great storm. Rain poured, winds howled, lightning flashed, and thunder roared. Afraid for his cocoa plants, Kunu ran out into his field and attempted to fight the storm. Yelling and running, Kunu did what he could to save his precious crop. Nhyira ran outside to reason with Kunu and bring him back inside to safety. As she approached Kunu, she could see the silhouette of Kunu desperately trying, in vain, to salvage what he could of his work. Suddenly, there was a great flash of light, an immense crashing of thunder, and Nhyira was thrown backwards. She hit her head on a cocoa plant and fell asleep.
When Nhyira woke up, she did not recognize where she was. The smoldering field of cocoa rubble looked nothing like her familiar cocoa farm. With a start, she remembered Kunu, and ran about the ruins of what they had grown together, searching for him. He was nowhere to be found. Nhyira knelt down and wept.
In the time after the storm, Nhyira was despondent. She couldn't sleep or eat. The only thing she could do was the only thing she really knew how to do, plant cocoa. For the sake of her children, Nhyira knew she could not give up. She must provide for her family. So Nhyira salvaged what she could of the cocoa crop, sold it to make just enough to cover her debts, and promised to do better next year.
When the next growing season came, Nhyira worked harder than she ever had to grow a bountiful crop. When it came time to sell the cocoa, Nhyira again made enough to cover her debts, but there was little money left over for food for the rest of the year.
Nhyira was devastated and could not understand why there wasn't enough money. She then realized that when Kunu was alive, he had bought the supplies and sold the cocoa crop. Nhyira had never had to do any of those things, and she didn't have the experience necessary to negotiate the prices that she wanted.
Nhyira was starting to lose all hope that she would ever be able to become a successful cocoa farmer, but she knew she had to rise up and find some way to feed her family.
Suddenly, Nhyira remembered what her mother had taught her all those years ago. She could make soap out of the cocoa husks left over from the harvest. Nhyira knew that many women in her village did not know how to make soap, and maybe, just maybe, they would buy some of hers.
Nhyira quickly set about gathering the cocoa husks and turning them into wonderful soap. As soon as she had enough, she went to the village marketplace and set up a ramshackle stand to sell her creations.
Nhyira waited and waited, but no one seemed to want her soap. Just as Nhyira was getting ready to pack up and go home, a poor cocoa farmer shuffled up to her stand.
"Is that soap you are selling?" the poor man asked.
"Yes, it is," replied Nhyira.
"My family and I had a tough year, and we could use just about anything to add a little happiness to our lives. I'll take 1 bar, please," exclaimed the farmer.
So Nhyira packaged up 1 bar of soap for the farmer and took his money, thanking him as he started on his way.
The next day, Nhyira went back to the market and set up her stand once again. That day, 3 women cocoa farmers came to Nhyira's stand looking for the wonderful soap that works so well and smells so good. The farmer from yesterday had loved the soap so much that he had told all his neighbors about it.
The cocoa farmers who had bought Nhyira's soap went home and told their neighbors all about it.
Soon, Nhyira was making soap for just about every family who lived near the village, and she had enough money to buy some good food for her family.
As time passed, Nhyira realized that many other families in her village were struggling and needed some way to make money too. The mothers of those families, however, could not make soap because they did not know how.
Nhyira knew just what to do. When she went to sell her soap and the women came to buy it, Nhyira stopped them and asked them to stay a while. While the women waited, Nhyira showed them how to turn old cocoa husks into wonderful soap.
The women were so excited and went home right away to begin making soap of their own. Soon more and more women in the village were making soap and selling it to farmers all across the land.
Many of the women had their own skills. Some women knew how to batik, tie, and dye. Others made delicious breads and pastries. And still other women knew how to extract oil from palm leaves and raise snails to sell at the market.
All of the women in the village began to teach each other new skills, and the market became a busy place of buying and selling. A wonderful community developed in the village, and families were no longer hungry. The Kuapa Kokoo community soon heard about the wonderful things the women in the village were doing. One day, a leader from Kuapa came looking for Nhyira, and asked her to teach women in other villages how to do things like make soap, so that they could feed their families as well.
Nhyira was very excited and agreed to help. Nhyira also knew that many women in the kingdom could not read or write, and she asked if Kuapa could help her teach them. Soon, women all across the kingdom were learning to read, write, and do arithmetic.
Nhyira was so thankful that Kuapa Kokoo was working to help the women cocoa farmers, and she was glad that she could help.
Kuapa Kokoo started helping the women cocoa farmers learn all kinds of new skills, and the women's crops began to flourish. Kuapa taught the women good cocoa growing habits, and provided the women with coins to help them buy supplies to grow their cocoa.
All across the kingdom, women cocoa farmers were prospering and joining Kuapa Kokoo. Nhyira and her family were prospering as well. Nhyira had finally become the successful cocoa farmer that she wanted to be, and she had the power to help so many other women in her kingdom be successful too.
Even though women cocoa growers all over the land were doing well, Nhyira knew what her mother would say. There is still a long way to go. But for the time being, Nhyira was so happy, and she hoped that her mother would be proud.